Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar where we present the new integration for Polarion called LemonTree.Connect for Enterprise Architect. I'm happy to also have Heinz Dresper from Siemens with us, and he is going to introduce also from the Siemens side the new Polarion integration. So welcome, Heinz Dresper from Siemens, and let him talk a little bit about the integration.
Thanks, Philip. Yes, actually, I'm also just a guest here today, but I'm very happy to announce in the first place that we now do have a technology partnership between our companies, LieberLieber and Siemens. That means a technology partnership is a recognition of Siemens for valuable partners and their solutions, which add value to on top of Polarion. And technology partnership means that the partner gets access to Siemens resources and organizational help, and so in order to improve and further tailor solutions like these, like the connector here. And this, of course, is a big benefit for all of us, for LieberLieber, for Siemens, and of course for you, the customers, because it enables us to provide feedback, early feedback about the development and the feature of the tools, and also because we always are looking for long-term partnerships. This also provides, of course, assurance that Polarion also will be developed further in the future, so that it's future-proof. So in the end, it's this partnership, I'm really happy about this, is very powerful for both sides in order to bring in improvements and suggestions into the product. Furthermore, we will see that the approach which LieberLieber took with this connector fits very nicely with our integration strategy of MBSE tools with Polarion, direct integration of MBSE tools with Polarion. And also it fits very nicely with a Siemens-wide strategy of our accelerator platform, which also spans many other Siemens products like Polarion Teamcenter and so on. Maybe for those who already have taken a look at or who know about the history about Polarion Enterprise Architect connections, you might know that there also is an existing integration already for some or many years already available on our side. But as you will see, this is a bit limited because it's more just about pushing data from EA to Polarion or publishing data from EA to Polarion. And you will see here this new connector really serves also a couple of other use cases we all have been waiting for. But nevertheless, we will also further develop the other integration. But however, we encourage all of our customers who were interested in the older connector to take a look at this connector here, because as I said, I think it really adds great value. So many thanks to you, Philip, and so let's see what our new integration now can do.
Okay, thank you, Heinz. So as you can see, this integration is called LemonTree.Connect for Enterprise Architect. So LemonTree.Connect Polarion. The reason is that we want to integrate our integrations into the LemonTree product family. So if you know LieberLieber, you might already have heard LemonTree, the different merge tool for enterprise architect models. Since we think that ILM and MBSE and version controlling is all one big topic and cannot be separated. So this is the reason why we think those integrations also have to be in the same place as our LemonTree technology and the other LemonTree tools that we have. And we also see that there is a high interest for those kind of integrations. So also many thanks to the high number of participants and interests, almost like 180 participants that are interested in seeing how an integration between Polarion and Enterprise Architect with the LemonTree technology works. So to give you an idea how this works and what was the motivation behind creating such an integration, I will show you an overview of the tool, so how it works, what is the intended workflow behind it, and then afterwards I will switch to a live demo to show the tool in action, to show how it works when we import elements from Polarion and export them from Enterprise Architect to Polarion. First of all, the motivation, basically, we built this integration to have a full traceability in ALM. So we have the ALM world from Polarion and the MBSE world from Enterprise Architect, and we want to exchange traceability. So we always want to see, for example, which requirements are implemented, which architectural components are implementing which requirements. And since most of the time those elements are in separate tools, so Polarion and Enterprise Architect, there needs to be a way to connect the different types of elements. And the idea is to have a future-proof integration, so connecting the ALM world with the SysML UML world. So SysML UML is the most common case. Basically, it's Enterprise Architect elements, so there's no differentiation if it's software system specific or any other types of Enterprise Architect elements. But as we see, the most common case is from the engineering world, basically. And we want to enable to create traceability, but not only create the traceability, also share the traceability. And there the most common case is to link requirements that have been defined with the derived architecture, which is maintained in the modeling tool, so Enterprise Architect. And here you can see the overall workflow that the connector is supporting. So first step, usually we start in Polarion, we have requirements. Also to mention, requirements here is an example. There are many other types of elements in Polarion, but we refer to this example always with requirements and architecture. So we have elements defined in the ALM tool, so Polarion. We import those requirements with the connector to Enterprise Architect, and there the requirements serve as a starting point for the system architects. They analyze the requirements, they define further behavior analysis, and then architecture is derived, and the architecture is then linked to the requirements in order to establish the traceability. This is very important because then we can answer multiple questions. So which requirements have not yet been implemented, which architectural components, which ports, which blocks or whatever create which traceability links to which requirements. And when we have defined the traceability, this is exported to Polarion, because we not only want to see the link between architecture and requirements in Enterprise Architect, we also want to see this in Polarion. So then at the end, we have in both tools the information where requirements and architectures is linked. And we also see more information, like, for example, in Polarion, the diagrams, because usually architecture is much more understandable when it's expressed with diagrams. So in order to have this also enabled, we support exporting the diagrams, the elements which are on the diagrams, and their links to the previously imported requirements. What are the highlights of our integration? So we can import work items from Polarion into the Enterprise Architect project. Here it's called work items because this is quite flexible. So it's not only reduced to requirements, that's only a matter of configuration and mapping. We can also export architecture items and their traceability information to Polarion. So this is also not reduced to a specific type of element. You can map any element that is existing in the Enterprise Architect repository. You can also use different kind of links to express the traceability. So this is also just a matter of configuration and mapping. And we also support the linking inside of projects. So it's not only about the external linking, so having links between requirements and architecture. It's also about linking internally. So if, for example, architecture elements are linked to each other, or if requirements have dependencies or relationships between them, you can also include those links and map them to other links and import or export them depending on which direction. And to give you a better idea how this works, we prepared an example and a demo how we implemented this. So I'm switching to Enterprise Architect. So the LemonTree.Connect Polarion works as an Enterprise Architect plugin. And from here, we do the integration, so either importing or exporting. But the first step, as I've shown in the slide, is not starting in Enterprise Architect. It's actually starting in Polarion. So here I have prepared a Polarion project. We have the requirements of a small example system. This is a electrical power window controller of a car, and here we have some non-functional requirements and functional requirements described. And in order to start working on this project, I want to have these requirements in Enterprise Architect to derive the system architecture here. So what I'm going to do is to create an empty package here in Enterprise Architect, and I'm going to use the integration, so LemonTree.Connect Polarion, and I'm starting the import from Polarion, and you can see this is pretty fast, so already finished. And we can see here we have a representation of the Polarion requirements. So functional requirements as a container for all the functional requirements, and also a container for non-functional requirements. So you can see that the traceability, sorry, not the traceability, the structure is also represented. So here we have this structure for the containers. This is also imported. And to have an idea how an element looks in detail, because here this is a representing element. We get the Polarion item and we create a representing element in Enterprise Architect. If I want to see the full details of this, because here in Enterprise Architect we have the name, and also in the nodes we import the description. And if we check the tagged values, some other information is imported, like the author, the ID, the priority, severity. So those are all attributes that can be mapped. In order to see the detailed view of this element, I can jump from the element to Polarion. So for example, here, if I open this element here, and then I go to open in Polarion, then the web page of this item is opened, and then I can see the detailed description of this with all the Polarion attributes. And for example, if I now see that something has to be changed, I will not do this here in Enterprise Architect, because this is not the original requirement. I'm importing it to represent it, but the real requirement originates from Polarion. So if I want to change this, I will do this in Polarion. So I can change this here, for example, raise and lower window. I'll just call this here update, so we will all see what has changed. And then I will switch back to Enterprise Architect, and then I will start another import. And now I can see the update has been imported. So we can also deal with synchronization. So all the elements will be synchronized. And here, this is why I also refer to the LemonTree technology, since in LemonTree, we use our technology to diff and merge Enterprise Architect data, we can use this technology also to identify differences between data. So we do this also here in order to be more efficient. So only the delta is transferred. So only the changes are imported or synchronized between Polarion and Enterprise Architect. So this is about the importing side. So now when we have the requirements in Enterprise Architect, we can start deriving the architecture. This is what I already prepared. So I have some SysML diagrams describing the system context with some internal block diagrams, also a bit more detailed system architecture, so a system decomposition with other types of internal block diagrams. And this is all good, so I can export this already to represent this in Polarion. But what is really interesting is the linkage between the requirements and the architecture. So I will establish this traceability using a diagram. In Enterprise Architect, there are multiple ways to do this. I could also use, for example, traceability matrix. But for the time being, I will use a simple diagram to represent this. So for example, I will take this electric motor from the system context and maybe also high torque sensor and the power disable button. And I want to express which requirements those elements are implementing. So I would take this raise and lower window, then also lock signal and high torque detection. I will also put those to the diagram. So and now I'm going to link those. So here, what is currently defined in my mapping is that I use a realization link. So in order to establish the traceability, I connect the architectural part, so the blocks, with the requirements using a realization link. And then I can export the architecture, including the diagrams. And then we can see the representation of the architecture in Polarion and also the linkage to the requirements. So, and to do this, I will use the architecture package here and start an export. And here you can see what I haven't shown before. So when the package is not configured yet, here I can select a Polarion project to which I want to export the data. And I want to export this to the same project where I imported the requirements from. This is not something you have to do. You can also export it to a different project and use multiple projects for requirements and architecture. For our example, I will use the same. So system requirements, what I imported here. I will start the export. And now you can see here in the background that some of the diagrams are popping up and flashing up. This is a sign of the connector extracting the images in order to transfer them to Polarion and attach the images to the work items. So we also have the representation of the diagram in Polarion. So you can see how this is set up. And same also what we have with the import. If you want to see the detailed information, then we can jump back to Enterprise Architect in order to understand how this is implemented in the detail, because this is only also just a representation of the architecture. The real data is in Enterprise Architect. So now I successfully postponed with the discussion that it took a bit longer than usual. Now you can see that it is finished. And now if I switch back to my Polarion and I'm going back to the work items and I'm hitting the refresh button. So then you can see that the architecture is represented. So we have packages, diagrams, classes, or in our case, since we are in SysML, it's blocks, and also the structure of Enterprise Architect or the hierarchy is represented. And we can take a look at the different properties, but what is most interesting is for the diagrams, we can see a visual representation. So I'm just resizing this a bit. So here, system architecture, that's the overview. Then if we take a look at ECU, this is the internal block diagram. The same, we can also take a look for the system architecture. So we can see all of the architecture diagrams and the architectural elements. And to also check the traceability information that we exported, we can take a look at the power disable button. And if you take a look already, you can see that there is a linkage to the requirement, because the links are always represented here at the top above the name in Polarion. But we can also check the linked work items. And here we can see the power disable button is implementing the high torque detection. And if I click on that, that's the requirement that I have imported in the first step. So this is how the traceability, so connectors from Enterprise Architect, are mapped in Polarion using the work item link roles, which in this case is implemented by, or if I go back to the power disable button, here it is called implements. So this is also supported. And here, this is an example how you can set this up with the implements link and a realization on the Enterprise Architect side. But in reality, this is, again, just a matter of configuration. So if you want to use any other type of link, you can do this. So it's basically just a matter of configuration. And to basically end this whole round trip, so we had importing of requirements, and if a requirement is imported, I can jump to Polarion. Then we exported elements from Enterprise Architect to Polarion. And now if we want to see the details of an exported element, then we can also jump back to Enterprise Architect. So I'm taking this electric motor here. So this is an element, a block, as you can see here from Enterprise Architect. And if I scroll down, I have to refresh it. It's not yet properly there. Just checking what went wrong. Ah, there we go. So again, taking the electric motor. There we have a hyperlink. This hyperlink refers to the Enterprise Architect model that I'm using. And we can also see there is a reference to the global unique ID of this element. So if I click this, this will redirect me to Enterprise Architect, and you can now see it selects the element. Maybe this was a bit too quick, so I'm doing that again. I'm just closing the entire model tree, so it's a bit more visual. If I again use the hyperlink, you can see that it jumps to the element that has been exported. So you can basically have a full round trip. So navigating, for example, from my electric motor element, this electric motor element has a linkage. So if I open up the traceability, this implements raise and lower window. If I switch to this element in the project browser, I can use the open in Polarion in order to jump to this element. And in Polarion, since it's linked, I can see here it is implemented by electric motor. And from electric motor with the hyperlink, I can again go back to Enterprise Architect. So since we have the traceability on both sides, we can basically go round and round. And thanks to the navigation, it is also easy to understand what is changed and how it's linked. And final thing that I want to mention here, so usually, so if you know us already, we are very keen on having version controlling in the background and setting up build pipelines for working with models and ALM tools. So our main vision is to have this integrated into a build pipeline. So we're also working on an automated version of this Polarion integration, which can be used in a build server context, so in a build server pipeline. And this will enable us to also automatically analyze the differences and do an automatic synchronization to Polarion when a commit is happening in the version control system. And for example, if you integrate this into any kind of version control context. So here we have an example with a GitHub action, so GitHub project, and then we have a GitHub action that is running a comparison after I committed a change into Polarion, and then I can use LemonTree to view these changes. So this is something that is generated. So this artifact here is generated by the build process, and then LemonTree can be used in order to show the differences. So I also know what has changed in detail, and very important is also the change between the requirements that have been changed if they are linked to an architecture. So this would be set up with so-called suspected links. So if you import an update of a requirement that is changed and it's linked to an architectural element, this will be flagged as suspected. And if you combine all of this, you can set up a very powerful continuous integration approach that is well known from software development to integrate ALM, modeling, software development, all in one common process, basically. So regarding the functionality, so to summarize it, what is possible, we are able to import requirements from Polarion into Enterprise Architect. And as I said, requirements is here the most common case, but it's a matter of configuration. And these requirements are then used in order to derive the system architecture, and architectural components, blocks, classes, interfaces can be exported to Polarion. Here we can represent the architecture, including the hierarchy and also including diagram depictions in order to make the model more accessible also from the ALM world, and also to represent the traceability information that is stored in Enterprise Architect and then also populated to Polarion. Okay, so I have heard that there are multiple questions, and some have already been answered from some colleagues of mine. So basically, we will thanks for all the questions. We will gather them, and if we have not answered them yet, we will send all of them out, including the answers. I will just take a look at some of them which are still open. Okay. I'm just seeing one question which is very easy to answer. So can custom fields from Polarion be used for importing? Yes. So any type of fields, if it's a simple field like textual field, then it can be imported. A link field, so if it's a link role to another element, this can also be imported. Then it's mapped to a connector, and other custom fields of type text can be imported as well. So everything that you've seen today will be sent out. We will send you all of the slides that I've shown, and also the recording of the webinar, and including the answers to all of your questions. And we will also send you a link to the homepage where you can download and try out the version of the Polarion integration. So I will say thank you for the participation and also for all of the interesting questions. We will take care of the questions, answer them and send them out. And we will be happy to receive feedback, more questions, and also we will be happy to receive requests for trying out this new integration from our LemonTree product family called LemonTree.Connect for Enterprise Architect. Thank you very much.